Okay, here is how I figured out. If not how to figure it out, here's my formula for vibranium, and this is how shit gets made. Let alone, this is just the proof that it's fucking real, and explain to y'all that I invented it. I replaced the Tesla coil, which is what everybody had a big whoop about, and I completely replaced all that shit and made a renewable, reliable, and sustainable energy source. The most natural energy source in the world, let's say that, right? And also the hardest metal in the world. Okay, so you got vibranium. Where do we start? At the arc reactor. Now, this is how you build an arc reactor. This would have been the outlet for it right there, where the plug would come out and you'll plug it into something, and then that'd be the energy source that start lighting up. You'll see shit going around like the Iron Man arc reactor, right? This would have been the first model of it, right? So I'm gonna take you through the steps of what Tony Stark did basically in the movie, and this was in real life. Okay, so you got boom. We start here. You got iron, which is a magnet, right? It'd be the hardest metal in this within the ground. That's why iron ore is worth a lot. Excuse me, because iron is a magnet, but that's why iron is made. They make swords and shit with it and all that, right? So, okay, boom, you got iron. It's the hardest metal in the ground on Earth. So why is it the hardest metal? Because it has a whole bunch of pressed in protons from gravity and shit, making it that hard, and it's speeding it up from the pressure to electrons. Them electrons create the polarity that is within the fucking magnet. That's why you have a north and a south, and that's the proof that the dimensional plane that we're on, excuse me, at least the one we did for Earth is 2D and Earth is 3D, because everything, I don't got time to explain all that to prove people that the Earth is round and a ball, and the dimensional plane we're on is 2D. But anyway, so you get electrons. Then under that is there's just a lot of protons, basically either a lot of protons being charged up. That that makes that into a conductor or conducting, as far as what conducting looks like. That's what conducting looks like, aka like a water vortex or a turbine or anything like that. This is what a conductor looks like when it's doing that type of shit and it creates energy onto it. That's just electrons pulling electrons out of the sky. So then you have this. You have the electrons within the fucking matrix being pulled out into this conductor, right? That's how you make electricity. Now, this was the first version of the Tesla coil, aka kind of like this arc reactor, but I'll explain it a little bit easier so you can explain it, so you can understand the Tesla coil, because they won't give nobody the straight up answer of what it fucking is. It looks like a fucking piston. It's basically a fucking piece of iron, a magnet with a piece of gold around it, put into both ends to create energy, a concurrent flow of fucking energy going through it to create energy. That's how we get electricity and shit. It's the inverted version of the Jacob's ladder, basically. So now you go over here. You still have the arc reactor, which is a very real thing as far as how to make sustainable energy and shit like this type. So you go over here. You got the iron equals the magnet. The magnet that it is equals the north and south polarity. The world has a 2D surface, and that's how the sun goes around it. Because of the magnetic field around it, the magnetic field around it, so it's just always in a perfect fucking orbit. Kind of how they do the quantum the superconductor with the superconductor fucking plate. And you just see it's just spinning around. That's kind of how that shit, or not kind of, that's pretty much how that kind of goes in the energy from the sun is making it move. So boom, all right, still looking at the arc reactor. I'm just saying I put an X through it because as I was drawing it to make this shit go into the arc reactor, I realized I don't even need an arc reactor anymore, aka just like in the fucking Iron Man movie. So I don't have to make this a fucking 20-minute video. All right, now I'm trying to figure out from the Tesla coil how to make an arc reactor and what would be a viable energy source to put into the arc reactor, because iron isn't going to be strong enough. So through the midst of all that, I made my way straight to vibranium. Now here's how you make vibranium, right? I have the recipe. I'm not going to give it the recipe right now, but oh no, this is how you make it. And if you was to find shit to make vibranium, then you're good money. But other than that, I'm not going to. You'll get it by the end of this. And if you can get it, then you get it. If not, then cool. But everybody wanted the technology to make it. That's why I don't have a piece of vibranium in my hand right now. Okay, anyway. And this might have been made already, for all I know. It might just be deep within the government secrets or whatever, but all in all, this is basically, they'd be using it if that was the case for energy. And they make the movies and shit like that, so you'll think like maybe like they actually have a vibranium shield. Maybe they do have a vibranium shield, but they don't know and understand how vibranium works, because vibranium is the same shit you make Captain America's shield out of, and the same shit that Black Panther eats. And if your body doesn't take to it like it would in real life, then you will fuck around and die. And so I'm going to explain Captain America's shield, how that metal's made, and then the energy source, how Captain America how Iron Man's shit is sourced, or how Iron Man shit is powered up, and how Black Panther gets his powers. Okay. So now you got the most natural energy in the universe plus the hardest metal is vibranium, and I'm gonna explain how that goes as soon as I get to where I was supposed to be at. Alright, I didn't explain it too well, but I'll even get better. No, I did explain it too. This is just the formula. If you could get this, then you would understand it. Okay, so you got protons, they heat it up, they become electrons. It's the same thing as if it gets gravity on it, but I'll explain that between the difference, right? So just imagine over here, this is the Tesla coil. This is the equation for a Tesla coil. So boom, you go over here. This is the arc reactor, which you're supposed to put a Tesla coil in order to make it a sustainable energy source, to make this arc reactor, the plug-in, basically the Iron Man thing. This is what Tony Stark made in the cave. So I'd have understood this because I understood the iron and shit that you need to do. I'd have made this in the cave. I'd have figured it out. I just didn't know fucking the conducting science at the point in time, or at that point in time. So boom, you got the protons, they get heated up, they make electrons. Same thing over here as if they was to have gravity on them. So boom, because of the heat, you have light in the void. The heat that comes from making the fucking moon, which is what a very vital piece right now, which we're just gonna look at this for a second so I can show you guys. It's around about the same. This is how I got my equation, and this is how I figured it out. This right here, which I'll come back and explain a little bit later, but just look at it right now and tell me this doesn't look the same as that, kind of in the same sense. This is the solar system, right? So this is how you're gonna make vibranium. This is how you make a Tesla coil. Same, almost the same difference, except the Earth doesn't have the things to make the energy sources that the moon, which is where you'd have to get this shit, they don't have the same energy sources. So here's what we do, right? You got the light in the void, aka the stars in the void in space, right? And then you get all of those refractment. Refractment is a very important part of this, right? So if you get all those refracting, aka light right here, 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 aka all the stars that's pointing in one direction, and then the refractment that will be coming off of the moon for lunar eclipse, or for lunar power, and the solar lunar power, but the sun is eclipsing off of the not eclipsing, but giving the moon the energy. Now we come back to this again. This is how energy works in the first place, the Tesla coil at least. The sun gives off energy to the moon. The moon gives off energy to the earth. The earth has its own core. The core of it is very, very hot. But we can't prove the core because we haven't been there. But I can explain to you how this gets very hot, and I don't feel like going through all that. So let's just go back to my original matrixing, right? You got a 0. This is an original energy source. You got a 1. This will be the electrons, but these are basically protons. Protons are electrons, just like photons are protons. Excuse me. Photons are breakdown protons. Protons are charged up electrons. Electrons are charged up protons. I'm trying to say this shit kind of fast. So this is a conductor. Why it's a conductor? Because it's an original energy source, just like iron. You got this. This is an energy source because it has been now heated up to the point to where it became energy. It was just protons from what was out in outer space, maybe, or at least from, like I said, here we go. Here's the refract. That's how you get this. And every scientist knows this how you make supernova. You get all these lights, the refractment from it, aka how you would fry an ant. You take all of these, you take like a laser or something like that, and you beam it all together. Now with all of this light refractment, aka how we would end up making, like, you know, if not a laser, which is basically what it is, then imagine refractment as a laser right now instead of it being a light in the void that made the sun. Imagine refractment or a whole bunch of lasers that would eventually synthesize something, which is what we get into, aka how the sun turns into supernova from the light in the void, and how refractment, the refractment from the light in the void is what creates the fucking pinpoint, you know, lights that pop through that make the sun and shit like that, because it's all going into a vortex and shit like that. But I'll explain a little bit more. Hold on. So you get something that'll synthesize, aka a whole bunch of lasers pointing at one fucking thing. That's how you synthesize the shit, right? So boom, so to do synthesization, you get a ore of iron, an ore from the moon and an ore from iron. AKA, if you was to take ore, which is basically iron ore, would be like a rock from the ground that you chipped away at, and you found some iron, some magnetic iron. So if you get moon ore, boom, from the moon over there, the most natural element the most natural unmanipulated element, the most natural element, but it's unmanipulated, and that's how you get the most natural energy sources, the most unmanipulated things. AKA back to my zeros and ones, the matrix, and my not thesis, but the actual proven. So back to zeros and ones. So boom, you get moon ore, which will have vibranium in it, but I'll explain that. Then you get vibranium ore, which is the same thing as the moon ore, because if you was to take this, boom, take the recipe for this, then you make all those get put together, it would be the vibranium metal. Then you synthesize it, basically. But this is the thing about vibranium, you can't synthesize it how you would synthesize something here, so you have to do it my way. And I'm going to actually explain that in the next part of this video, because this is going to take a minute to upload. So let me